YouTube. My name is Noah, and what you're about to watch, is a little educational piece from the 12-hour charity live stream that we did on Twitch for the Alzheimer's Association. We work really close with them. We have been since before I was even in the chapter. We're with SAE, the Arizona Delta chapter at Embry Riddle. And since we couldn't really do much in person this semester, we decided to do something fun online where we would host a plethora of guests, some personal that had experiences with Alzheimer's in their personal life, and some that were educators. Our first piece is an educator. He talks to us about dementia, and it was Mr. Browne, and he was really awesome to have on. We had a lot of brothers ask questions, and it was just a really fun experience. We raised over $3,000 at the end of the day. It was amazing. Chat was loving it. We had plenty of people come in and ask questions in the chat as well, and it was just all time fun thing to do at the end of the day. And boy, was I drained. But this is the first piece of the 6 hour long educational piece, and I hope you guys enjoy. Go ahead and open up the audio channels. All right, we're back. We have Brian Browne with us here. Brian Browne, as I said prior, is the president of the Dementia Care Education and the editor-in-chief of Dementia Care News. Possesses 20 years of experience in the field of Alzheimer's and dementia. He's an expert Alzheimer's dementia research, cognitive science, technical trials, aging, cultural competency, caregiver strategies, and dementia training and education. Brian, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Um, so what I do particularly, I've been involved in Alzheimer's research for a long time, and I worked for Banner Research for like 18 years in clinical research space, but realized that there were some gaps that were not being really attended to, and so this is where Dementia Care Education was born, and um, we do a lot of things for people who interact with those who have Alzheimer's and dementia. So there is a lack of knowledge about the disease, first and foremost. And so we wanted to really address that on a really practical level by creating certifications so that you can become dementia care certified, by really reaching people, everyone from certified financial planners to hospices to home cares to assisted livings to research and all that, and really penetrate the people that were end users who interact with people with Alzheimer's and dementia. That wasn't being done. And so it was basically a see a need, fill a need basis. And that's where Dementia Care Education was born. And we have a passionate crew of people that are really excited about touching lives and changing the world.
It's awesome, man. So yeah, like prior to me actually getting into this fraternity, I didn't know very much about dementia or Alzheimer's. I knew like of the disease. I didn't know how severe and how many like how much it can affect people and how many people can actually get affected. What's the number? It's like 1 in 80, right?
Yeah, so right now, over 6 million people currently have it, but it is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States, with a trajectory of going even higher, just because of population statistics. So it's going to affect everybody. It is affecting everybody. And really, a lot of people don't realize the fundamental impact that it has just on everything from our economy to healthcare to just aging, growing older, and wondering if you're going to get it, and so on and so forth. And so it is really catching people off guard when they realize the statistics and the prevalence and the incidence of the disease.
Okay. One question I have that's probably like one of the largest questions I've been pondering. What's like the steps you should take if you notice like one of your family members starts to have symptoms of dementia? Like what are the steps? What are the things to look out for?
So that's a great question. It's a question within a question. So let me get to the question within a question. So what happens to us as we age is that things don't work as well as they used to when you were younger. So, for example, a 25-year-old man is going to run faster than a 50-year-old man because the aging process, as you age, your physicality, your muscular strength and muscular endurance starts to wane as you get older. You know, for us guys, our testosterone levels lower and we can't sustain as much stamina and our muscles atrophy a bit and but we're still in good health, but we're not as healthy as a 22 to 25-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's part of the normal aging continuum. So let's juxtapose that to the brain right now. As we get older, our brain goes through these natural changes as well. And these natural changes um, start to manifest themselves in ways that you just don't feel as sharp as you used to. So again, you know, when you guys are at the height of your cognitive lives, well, not quite. Your brain fully matures at 25, so not quite at the height of your cognitive lives, but ultimately when you're there, you know, things are clicking, you're going all, you can remember everything and so on, but then all of a sudden folks get to about 65 and they're not as sharp as they used to be when they were 25 or 30. And so there's a gap, just like the physical gap that I just mentioned. That's when people start to get worried. They start thinking that because there are some, you know, slowing of some cognitive abilities, does that mean I'm going to get Alzheimer's? And the answer to that is no, it doesn't. What happens is there's something called normal age related cognitive decline. It's the same with normal age related physical decline. But when it comes to the brain and memory, um, people tend to uh, freak out a little more. Let's put it that way. It tends to become um, more really noticeable in terms of what happens and what transpires. So there are the normal age-related memory declines. Like you don't, you become forgetful. You forget where you put your keys, but everybody does that.
Hmm.
But you may do it just a little more when you're 65 than when you did it when you were 30. Um, Things like having a word on the top of your tongue and all of a sudden, you know, you can't spit it out. That's normal age-related memory decline. It doesn't mean that you're having any kind of Alzheimer's, or you're having a conversation with your friend and you lose the train of the conversation. You know what I mean? All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you look like a deer in the headlight. That's normal age-related memory decline. Or let's say you're golfing and you're on the 16th green putting out and you look at the 17th tee box and you see someone you've known for 10 years and all of a sudden their name just doesn't come to you and you're saying, oh my gosh, that's who is that um, and then when after you put out, you go, oh, that was John. That's perfectly normal. But those kind of things lead people to think that, oh my goodness, is something going wrong? And I'm telling you, that's not. That's just normal age-related memory concern. But that was a question within a question. Now, getting to your question, what are some things that you should look at if, as people are getting old, to to kind of highlight whether it's not normal? Those are the things that I said were normal. But what does things look like when they're not normal? And that's a great question. So one of the things is you have to understand that Alzheimer's is a functional disease, meaning there has to be functional impairment involved for it truly to be a dementia.
Hmm.
So when I say that, just not being able to remember something isn't good enough for it to be considered Alzheimer's. It's got to be, you have to have functional impairment. And so functional impairment means this, that ultimately you don't remember how to get dressed. You're having difficulty fixing yourself breakfast. Um, you're having difficulty navigating around your neighborhood. You're forgetting what streets. That's a functional impairment. So that's the key. Things that they've done all their life now, they're struggling to do. So that's one of the first things that you see. It disrupts your daily life. The second kind of key to look at is the the fact that you're having difficulty problem solving. Um, the the executive function of our brain and the frontal cortex of our brain is responsible for problem solving, and that's what you guys do every day. You
Hmm.
guys in your classes and all that stuff are asked to problem solve, and you go through the all the steps that you need to decision trees, and you solve problems. What happens to people when they start to get Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia is the fact that their ability to problem solve becomes much more difficult. It's from the simple to the complex. And so that's something that you got to look at is all of a sudden they're having difficulty making A plus B equals C steps in their lives.
Hmm.
Um, One of the other things you need to look out for is the difficulty completing familiar tasks. So you guys have been doing what you do for the past 18 to 22 years. It's what you do. You're experts at, being exactly who you are. But what if all of a sudden you woke up and, well, over a period of time you started to develop, hey, you know, um, writing notes for my classes is becoming a lot more difficult. You know, I'm not really good at writing notes. I'm starting to misspell words, and when I'm making myself breakfast, I'm forgetting I'm putting sour cream in my cereal instead of milk. Difficulty completing familiar tasks. It's those types of things that you got to start looking for.
Okay.
Um, and one of the other main things is when you sort of misplace your words. You use words out of order, or you use the wrong words to describe things. Those are some key things that you gotta look for when there's problem with language, either speaking it or understanding language.
Okay. So so it's more of those like subconscious tasks that you don't normally think about you're doing that you kind of slowly begin to deteriorate in those kind of tasks. You forget like maybe I misplaced this and with something else, or I've mixed something up that I really shouldn't have, something really simple. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. Any brothers got any questions in the chat?
I actually do have a question. How can so like I know it's very hard for a person with dementia to kind of as it's happening, it's very hard for them. How can we be there for I say like a grandparent who starts to get dementia and they it's in that slow decline? Is there a way that we can? I guess this is kind of that a two-pronged question. Is there a way we can help try to slow it down, or how can we be there to support them as someone who's starting to suffer from dementia or Alzheimer's?
Those are two great questions. So this is where the research is going, is the prevention, slow it down aspect. Um, and so prevention would be more for looking at your age and above who don't show symptoms. What could we do to sort of do that? And it really folds into what you talked about too, prevent or slow it down. How can we stop the progression? And research has looked at a number of aspects, lifestyle oriented aspects that do exactly that. One of the most heavily researched area is based on nutrition and diet. What we eat will determine really our risk for this disease, and subsequently potentially slow its progression as well. So our diet, the way that we metabolize food and the food that we eat, is so important to our cognition. Um, the neurons in our brain, specifically around the memory centers of our brain, are really sensitive to metabolism. So our brains are the most metabolic organ in our entire body. Roughly 30% of what you eat and 30% of the oxygen that you breathe in go to power your brain. Now, our brains have some very, very specific nutrient requirements. And when we don't fulfill those nutrient requirements, we suffer from, just like it would in the body, malnutrition. So think of this. We live in the greatest country in the world. We have the best medical care. Everybody's belly is full at the end of the night, right? But we have this choice of what we eat. So if you eat burgers, fries, and a lot of fatty foods and oily stuff or whatever, your brains are malnourished. You're not getting what they need. And when you look about malnutrition, the end result is things die. And the cells in your brain, the neurons in your brain, because of malnutrition, start to die and accelerate these Alzheimer's or dementia changes in the brain. So, in terms of reducing our risk, in terms of preventing Alzheimer's, it starts with food. we have to change the standard American diet. That's first and foremost. So one of the things we all can do is to really invest and look into a brain healthy diet. Got to have a brain healthy diet because our brains, again, most metabolic organ in the body, we have to be able to nourish it well. The second thing we have to be able to do is to perfuse our brain with oxygen rich blood because the way that our bodies were created, anything that is devoid of oxygen, what happens to it? It dies. So if I was to tie a rubber band around the tip of my finger and deprive it of oxygen, over a period of time, the tip of my finger is going to turn black necrotic and it's going to die because of lack of oxygen. The same is for the brain. When we deprive our brain of oxygen, anything with oxygen debt dies. So we start to accelerate those Alzheimer's changes due to lack of oxygenation. So we have to exercise. Exercise was designed to oxygenate our brains and our bodies. And we have to continue to move so that we can move oxygen because of, like I said, 30% of all the oxygen we breathe go to power the brain alone. So if you live a sedentary lifestyle with no exercise and are just on the couch gaming and all that kind of stuff, your brain is slowly dying over a period of time and slowing itself down. And so by the time you turn 65 or whatever the age is, 70, your brain has had so much oxygen debt because you didn't move your body that all of these Alzheimer's changes are accelerating. So diet and exercise play tremendous roles in that. Now, slowing the progression is the key thing. If you still do see those changes, you still have to employ a healthy diet and exercise. Now, the part two of your question, what could you do to support your grandfather if he came down with Alzheimer's disease, is a great question. And it's really that you need to engage your grandfather with real a healthy dose of brain healthy activity. So part of the phenomena that we see as people get older is they become what we call cognitively lazy. And just a generic term. We need to exercise our brains the same way that we need to exercise our bodies. And specifically in America, where we have American style retirements that we all do, we typically say, oh my goodness, I turned 65, I get to retire, I get to shut down and kind of do nothing. That is a fast track to death and brain deterioration when people retire and do nothing. That speeds up the death signal and all of those things. And so you want to have people engaged with purpose for a lifetime. So one of the things that you can do to help support, a grandfather who starts to have those kind of cognitive declines is continue to engage them, continue to have their mind work, continue to be part of a presence or a force of people that stimulates their brain. Because the research will tell you a lack of stimulated brain will accelerate those Alzheimer's changes. So diet, nutrition, exercise, and brain stimulation are all things that you can do to help support somebody even before an Alzheimer's diagnosis, but even in the early stages to help them through and engage them and just be there.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You got
Sweet. Does any other brother have a question to ask Mr. Browne here?
Yeah, I noticed that in the little newsreel that was playing before all of this, that there are a lot of demographic differences in how Alzheimer's affects people. So you mentioned that food and stuff like that is leading to Alzheimer's. Would you say that's part of the those demographic differences, or are there other factors that we need to know about?
So that's a great question. So yes, food, exercise are some of these modifiable risk factors that come into play. But there's other risk factors that come into play where we see some differences. So there are, so first of all, I want to say that Alzheimer's disease is not a genetic disease. I want to let you guys know that it is not a genetic disease as typical genetics work. So only 5% of Alzheimer's disease is truly genetic, meaning that they have the genetic markers for the disease, which is typically a double copy of the apolipoprotein 4 allele. Having 2 copies of that predicate the genetic aggressive form. And if you have that genetic aggressive form, remember only 5% of people have that, it typically amounts to an early onset of Alzheimer's and a quicker progression through the disease. And so if you have that inherited aspect, it's going to hit you early, it's going to run through you, and you're going to die earlier. 95% of people get what we call sporadic Alzheimer's disease. And sporadic Alzheimer's disease is this confluence of risk factors. So the higher the number of risk factors that you carry, the greater your chance of getting Alzheimer's disease. So again, we want to mitigate the amount of risk factors that we carry so that we can reduce our risk of Alzheimer's disease. So we have these both non-modifiable and modifiable risk factors. So some of the non-modifiable risk factors that will account for people having a greater risk of Alzheimer's disease is gender. So women have a 60% incidence rate of Alzheimer's, and men make up 40% of the incidence rate. So women are predisposed to having a higher risk for the disease. In science, we have supposed a number of theories why women have a higher threshold. One being estrogen. During menopause, women's levels of estrogen dip, and we know that estrogen is protective in the brain for Alzheimer's disease. And so through that menopause period, when they have this depletion of estrogen, their brains are more susceptible for neurodegeneration and those Alzheimer's or dementia changes. We also know that age is the number one risk factor, and women outlive men, and so we know that that's a factor as well. So gender does play a role. We also know that race plays a role. We know that Hispanics are 1.5 times more likely to get Alzheimer's disease than the majority population, and Blacks are 2 times more likely to get Alzheimer's than the majority population. And we know Native Americans are also about 1.5 times as likely to get Alzheimer's than the majority population. So race does play a factor. Then there's these other medical comorbidities that increase your risk for the disease. So everything like diabetes, heart disease, stroke, having what we call oxidative stress on the brain, having metabolic syndrome, things along those lines. All of those things raise your risk for the disease over time. And certain people are then more prone to certain diseases, or their lifestyle leans to get these types of diseases. And so therefore they are at greater risk for the disease overall. So we want to really, when we have these modifiable risk factors, we want to control those because those reduce our risk for Alzheimer's in general. But age is the one independent risk factor, the number one risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. The older we get, the greater our risk becomes to get Alzheimer's disease. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Kind of piggyback off that question, is there like instances of like people our age getting these diseases? Like, is it, because like you said, age is the number one risk factor, but like, is there like any kind of outliers where it kind of happens to be that young people are actually getting part of this like this disease, or is that kind of just not a thing?
So that's a great question. This is a disease of aging. So I want to make that clear. It is a disease of aging, and age is the number one risk factor. But here's where the risk factors start to pile up. It's this. We know one of the risk factors is head trauma. And we now, through many sports studies, including the NFL study, know that concussions are a risk for what we call chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. And CTE is a discernible risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. So as people play youth football, high school football, college football, college hockey, college soccer, even heading the ball and things like that, and they suffer concussions, we know that your age group now is starting to develop this really large risk factor for later on in your life to start to demonstrate the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. So you won't get Alzheimer's, but you're increasing your risk for it very early because of participating in high concussion laden sports. So this is where we've actually seen a phenomenon, a reduction in youth contact football. We'll see more youth involved in touch football than the tackle football because of these discernible risk factors. Anne McKee from Boston University is leading a study and has been leading a study of she has the greatest brain bank of concussions, people, NFL players and other sports, and has the bodies of high school students who have died prematurely, who have played football and so forth, and looked at their brains. And we've seen those brain changes in high school students and college students who have passed away who were participants in contact sports. So, really, the message to you guys is you have to protect your brains at all possible. Because if you don't and you start to suffer concussions or cluster concussions at your age group, you will develop the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease decades earlier based on chronic traumatic encephalopathy, what starts to degrade your brain and start neurodegeneration at a very young age. So the symptoms you won't see, but the brain changes in your age group will start if you start these high contact sports with high concussions. Excellent question.
Awesome. Thank you. I had no idea. That's really cool. I mean, not cool, but like interesting.
Yeah, yeah. You need to know this. If you don't know
Yeah.
this, you put yourself at greater risk when you're older. So it's a fantastic question.
Yeah, that's what's so great about all this is it's a very big informative piece for people like us and for people that are watching live. It's awesome to have you come on and share your expertise in a topic that not very many people talk about or know about, and it's quite amazing actually how much you know. I'm impressed honestly. You're able to spit off so much knowledge off the top of your head. It's quite impressive.
This is my field of expertise. Like I said, I'm a graduate degree in neuroscience and been working in the field of Alzheimer's for over 20 years. So this is what I do.
Awesome. Any other brothers have any questions for Mr. Browne? Let's see. Well, I have a question.
Sure.
So let's say you have a family member that is diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. What is like what is the best thing you can do for them, either clinically or at home, or in support or in lieu? What's the best thing?
So the best thing that you can do is first and foremost make sure that they're seeing a dementia specialist.
Mm.
So not all doctors or neurologists are considered equal. Everyone has a specialty, but what happens in this Alzheimer's and dementia space, unfortunately, is this. You typically go see your primary care physician, who is the gatekeeper of all your healthcare. And they do a fantastic job with cuts and colds and flus and all of those things, but they're not particularly skilled in one, diagnosing, or two, treating dementia. But typically, that's who we go to for as the catch all to everything. There are physicians out there that do nothing but specialize in dementia, Alzheimer's disease. They're dementia specialists, but people don't know that they exist, and so they continue to just either go to a general neurologist or their primary care physician who doesn't have as many tools in their toolbox to be able to treat or refer to clinical trials, et cetera, for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. So one of the first things I would recommend is you go and see a dementia specialist. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, to get and join a support group. And a support group is real important because it allows you to be with a group of other people that have that may be further along in a diagnosis that will give you kind of some tools and tricks and so on and so forth to help you navigate what you haven't gone through yet. So join a support group. Three, call the Alzheimer's Association, which has many programs to get educated. And we do this as well. We have copious education programs via live webinar format to do exactly this, educate people on a myriad of topics related. So you want to join support group and then, get educated. Three, you want to make sure your person with Alzheimer's dementia has the support that they need on the family level. So to make sure that they're in a place where they can receive the support that they need. A lot of times what happens is um, those folks are kind of hung out to dry. People don't know how to support. And so this is where the education comes in, and providing an atmosphere, everything from uh, dementia proofing your home. So, when you have these toddlers and babies, most families do what? Child proof their home. They cover the plugs, outlets, so the babies aren't like electrocuting themselves. They lock cabinets so the babies aren't drinking bleach or anything like that. They child proof their homes. As people go through a dementing process, um, again, memories wane, and they find themselves doing things that they shouldn't. So there's a dementia proofing of the home that needs to happen. And a lot of people don't realize that they need that to happen if they're going to live at home. There comes a point in time when people then will place their loved ones in a memory care or an assisted living facility. First thing you got to make sure, if that's the case, is that it's a dementia certified facility. The caregivers have dementia certified training, and the facility knows what they're doing. Because a lot of places will take your money and say that they're taking care of your loved one, but they're not even trained to do it. One of the dirty little secrets that go on out there is this: people will try and place their loved one in one of these facilities, and these facilities look beautiful. They got plush carpet, grand pianos, nice artwork. But the dirty little secret is this: they've hired the caregiver the night before off the street, and the caregiver is now looking after your parents or grandparents with no training whatsoever. So people need to do a better job holding these places accountable. And so that's something that um, let me start back in terms of where I was. So understanding um, understanding the way that we look at the risk stratification in terms
Ball rolling, chat.
of
I'm a mastermind.
how this all comes together, uh, is looking at the overall risk factors and mitigating your risk in that capacity, in supporting your grandfather or your parents in that regard. Um, what was the part B of that question?
So the original question was just to like what could you do to like in terms like help the person that's being diagnosed or slowly deteriorating. Like what could you do at home? What could you do? Like you were talking about.
Did you hear the part about all the support group and the dementia specialists?
Yes, we heard
Yeah,
that.
when you
Okay.
left off, you're talking about like the dirty secrets of like live-in care facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when that the dirty little secret is the fact that they can hire caregivers off the street to be able to care for your loved one the next day without training or education, and that aspect, you need to be able to support your families by ensuring that where you place them when that time comes is that it's in a place that is dementia care certified and has the ability to ultimately care for your loved one for the duration. There's a lot of people that'll take your money, but they won't ensure care. So everything from the dementia specialist that you see who has more tools in their toolkit, everything about the the where you're getting your education from, and support groups, to when it comes time to place, making sure that they're held accountable to being able to care for your loved one better as well.
Awesome. Any other brothers have any other questions?
Yeah, I actually do. So, before you're talking about like the version of like brain healthy food and everything like that, are there any vitamins that you would recommend taking as you age in order to make sure that you have like the nutrients and stuff that your brain needs to thrive?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you three things that everybody should be doing. Three things that everybody should be doing that would fortify your brain health. Again, um, neurodegeneration is behind this whole Alzheimer's continuum. And neurodegeneration is a big word, but it means that the neurons that support your memory, are starting to die. So there's some specific nutrients that are needed to support brain health. So let's talk about those. So let's say a woman gets pregnant and she goes to her obstetrician. The first thing the obstetrician does when a woman becomes pregnant is put her on what? Prenatal vitamins, right? Prenatal vitamins are full of folic acid or folate. And folic acid is the architecture of brain development. So when a young fetus is growing, the brain development is extremely important, and folic acid or folate are the building blocks of that brain developing normally as a baby. Here's the thing: we always need folic acid throughout our life to continue our brain development and supporting the architecture of our brain. People who are void or depleted in their folic acid, they oftentimes start to suffer from cognitive difficulty. And this goes back to younger people all the way till when you're older, because we've needed folic acid even in the womb. And so when we're low on that, it has these tremendous cognitive effects. Now, folic acid is, you can find that in a multivitamin. You'll typically get your daily amount of folic acid in a multivitamin. But here's the thing: if you aren't eating well, you oftentimes don't metabolize folic acid in the gut. And this goes into a whole other science of gut health. So you may be taking it in as a supplement, but you're not able to metabolize it where your brain can utilize it. It's a lock and key kind of effect. But you want to make sure that you're getting enough folic acid, because that helps the architecture of your brain throughout your life. So make sure you get folic acid. So that's the first one. The second is omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA, which is docahexanoic acid. That is the omega-3 fatty acid that allows your neurons to communicate to each other. So your neurons are like, they stand apart like this, and neurotransmitters jump from one neuron to the next, and that's how our brain communicates with each other. Our neurons are fortified in this communication by omega-3 fatty acids, specifically, like I said, DHA or docahexanoic acid. If you are low in DHA, you do not allow your brain to communicate as well. And so you have this sort of a brain fog throughout your life. And that's even from your age all the way up. So DHA, the part of omega-3 fatty acids, are important for our brains to be able to communicate with neurotransmitters and to be able to do all of these tasks. Really important. Omega-3 fatty acids found in fish specifically. Fatty, rich fish, the salmons, the mackerels, the tunas, all of those types of things are full of DHA and omega-3 fatty acids. Or you can take the supplements as well, and making sure that they're the pure form of omega-3. And the third is vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is essential to our cognition. It is the B vitamin that allows our brains to function normally. If you are low in B12, even at your age, you will all of a sudden be foggy headed and say, oh my gosh, I can't even remember anything. High school students have been reported low in B12, and their cognition and their energy level is tanking. It looks like you almost have mono. But people with notoriously low B12 levels go through life just saying, oh my goodness, I just aren't sharp. I'm just not sharp. Now, B12 is a vitamin that you need to eat in order to be able to get it. You can take supplements as well. But what happens sometimes when you take supplements is, again, the way that your gut processes food is that it doesn't process well sometimes the supplements of B12. So we have to actually take more B12 than we need to be able to process or to get the correct amount. The best way to take B12 is through B12 injections, to get a shot of B12 where you don't have to metabolize it in your gut at all. And so as people age, because they don't break down food as well in their gut, I recommend B12 shots every couple weeks and so on and so forth to really maintain their B12 levels. And for you guys, just to make sure that you're getting enough B12 in your regular diet, but also taking B12 in a multivitamin or something like that. But those are the three nutrients that I would recommend that you take consistently throughout your life: folic acid, omega-3 fatty acid, and B12.
Awesome. And then really quick, we got about 8 minutes left for this segment. Is there anything you want to plug real quick? Anything you want to say to to everyone watching?
So knowledge is power. You guys are at a really critical point in terms of your knowledge and understanding. And this disease affects everybody. So the more education that you can participate in, and the more that you can support um, Alzheimer's initiatives, the better it is, because your generation is going to be critical to make sure that we have no Alzheimer's by the time you guys get to the age of 65. It's going to be your involvement, your investment will ensure your future of a world without Alzheimer's disease. So support the things that we do. Engage with us. I'd love to continue a conversation with you guys and how you guys can truly continue to be leaders in this field. So just a generation and a half before you guys, HIV was rampant and people died of HIV on a routine basis. It was a deadly terminal disease. But in one generation, we've changed HIV from a terminal disease to a chronic manageable disease where no one's dying of HIV anymore. Research has come to a place where we've been able to clinically control the disease. And so it's now seen as you can live a normal lifespan with HIV, all because of research and an investment of people over that generation. You guys can be the generation that is responsible for helping wipe out Alzheimer's disease so that you never have it when you're older. And you guys get engaged, you guys help in any way that you can, fundraising or whatever. You guys can truly be the change agent. So I'm excited to be talking to you guys, for one, and two, really empowering you guys that you can change the world. Let this not be a problem by the time you guys get older. Let's do the work and solve it. So I really want to really empower that you guys can change the world.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. I think we have Chris. He has one more question. We got about 5 minutes left. Chris, if you want to go ahead and ask that question real quick.
Yeah. So my great aunt Evelyn went through a battle with Alzheimer's, and it was a very frustrating process for her and her daughter. It seemed like a constant battle between the reality that she was returning to and the reality as it was. Is there a way that we can help ease that frustration? Is it better to sort of play into the reality that they're in, or try to bring them back and help them stay in this? Yeah.
So that's a great question, Chris. So here's the answer. Our job is to live in their reality, because the process of neurodegeneration starts to erase parts of their memory, and it's not coming back. So they continue to live and play a loop in their brain of a reality that's familiar to them. They're not creating any new memories because the part of the brain that is responsible for creating new memories is so damaged that it can't create any new memories. So they consistently live in a loop that just brings back a time that they actually remember from memories that they have already created. So if we're trying to bring them back to a reality that they can't comprehend, it's serving no purpose other than agitating them and setting them off. Our job is to live in their reality. So there's this term that I use in training, and it's called therapeutic fibbing, meaning that we have to now adjust our standards to live where they are. And it may include therapeutic fibbing so that they are comfortable in the world that they're in. Otherwise, they're going to be frustrated. You're going to be frustrated. We're living in these two altered realities. That's not good for anybody. So our job is to live in their reality and support them where they are in this disease process.
That's great. That's very informative. I would not have anticipated that answer. Thank you.
Yep. No worries.
All right, well, Mr. Browne, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all of your knowledge with us and with the chat here. It's awesome to have someone that's so knowledgeable about the topic that we're trying to raise money for come on and be willing to share their experience, especially to a live audience. It's really truly awesome to have you here, and we really do look forward to hopefully reaching out to you in the future, maybe about doing some education pieces here and there for future fundraising opportunities, and it's really all I got. If you have anything else left you want to plug or anything, go ahead.
You have my contact information. Please stay in touch. Here for you guys. If you guys have any other questions or want to jump in on anything that we're doing or anything like that, please feel free. Website is dementiacareeducation.com. I am part of the Alzheimer's Association leadership as well. So we're lock in step, and feel free to use me as a resource.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're going to roll into a 10-minute break to our next guest, Sharon Weaver. She's a really, really close friend of mine's mom who has firsthand experience with Alzheimer's. Thank you again, Mr. Browne, for showing up, teaching us everything we need to know about dementia care and answering our questions and everything is awesome. And
my pleasure.
Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and roll right into the promo vids. Hey, Noah again. This is the end of the video. Congratulations. You sat through it all, and I applaud you for it. Thanks again for Mr. Browne for coming on and talking to us about things that we didn't know about dementia and Alzheimer's. It was awesome. It was a 12-hour charity stream. I'm sorry if you guys missed it. We didn't really have this YouTube channel up until now, actually. But thank you guys for coming in. If you guys come back and rewatch this on the YouTube channel, all the snippets of the informative bits, awesome. Thanks for showing up, hanging out in the chat, and learning with us. All the brothers had a great time. The charity stream's up, but who's to say that we don't do another one in the future? It was great having everyone on and learning different things that we didn't know about a organization that we care so much for and that we work so well with. So thank you guys so much. The links are in the description if any of you guys want to learn more about Alzheimer's or dementia. And I'll see you guys in the next one.